in that unconditional love space. Because many of us, as I mentioned earlier in Now Time Prophecy, we are going through an energy shift, a rebalancing, a realignment within the planet. And as this realignment occurs, what it is primarily doing is attacking, literally, this pure energy, attacking what Now Time Prophecy refers to as the jackal energy, or the masculine energy that is out of balance with the feminine. So that we are entering a time when we are realigning and rebalancing and emerging into what we call pure energy. I'd like to share with you some of the flow of the information, and then I want to tell you how the information has come forward. Okay.
Could you turn the lights on, please?
Before I understood what was happening to me, this was about early October, I had a vision of this symbol, and I didn't know what this symbol meant. It had no meaning, yet the way it came to me was so powerful, I was really affected by it. And I kept asking everybody I knew, what does this symbol represent? And nobody could tell me, no matter whether they were into Meta-Ninja or they were into Native American symbology, whatever, even Asian. Nobody could tell me what this symbol meant. And then in October, I had this dream. A teacher of mine, a South African, who I called his name earlier, Elias Mahangalu. His mother is a famous Indabelly artist. Many of you may know her as Esther Mahangalu. She does the Indabelly art and is taking it all over the world. But anyway, her son Elias is a native healer in the tradition of the Indabelly. And so we have been working together, and he feels that it's his responsibility to share with me the throwing of the bones, a very ancient tradition. Well, Elias and Esther had just left Washington, and I was at a mutual friends of ours where they stay, and we were having just one of those gatherings where it was just sort of impromptu and everything was really nice. And I felt this presence with me, and the presence told me to leave everybody and go into the living room. And so I did, and when I did, I sat down on the floor, and the next thing I know, I kind of went out. And not kind of, I went out. And as I was laying there, I found myself in a journey. My first memory was waking up in a cave. Elias was there, and he had his bag of bones, and he was shaking them. And all of a sudden, these light spears just came and stuck in the ground between us, like forming a barricade. And Elias went into what I call a trance dance. That's the only way I can explain it. And as he went into this trance, and the energy built and kept building and kept building, he took the bones and threw them on my chest. And when he did, I had the sensation of dropping through this tunnel of fire. And when I came out, first of all, I wasn't hot, but I knew it was fire. It was very deep red and black. But when I came out under the ocean. And I started walking, and there were these steps in front of me, and I walked up these steps, and at the top of the steps was this giant boulder. And I climbed up on this boulder and sat down, and when I looked up, I found myself in the middle of the universe. And there was this ball of light coming towards me. And as this ball of light got in front of me, there was a woman in this light, right? And she looked at me, and she was very upset with me. She said that uncertainty, it is now time to move away from uncertainty. That even in moments of not being sure, our actions must be in the energy of certainty. And she said to me, lightning charges, but it also destroys. And then I understood the significance of the symbol in terms of my journey. It's a reminder of me that if I continue to live absent of the truth of knowing who I am, then I carry with me the capacity to charge and destroy those things that are important to me because I'm not living in my own truth. And so as I began to understand that night I was told to record the dream. And every night since then, from October to the middle of January, I literally went into what we may call a semi-seclusion. My phone went off. I didn't go out. I didn't do anything but stay in my room. My family, my children, and my ex-husband and everybody thought I was losing my mind. But as I was instructed to write during this period of time, much information came forward. It was also my journey into trusting as I was led. And I will say that that was not a journey that was not without fear. I was also afraid. I thought I was losing my mind. I mean, am I going crazy? All the challenges that are in front of me right now, I need to be doing this, I need to be doing that, and yet Spirit kept saying, stay in your room and write. Where Now Time Prophecy began is with what we'll call the capstone. I'm going to give you a flash of something, and then I'm going to take it off, and we'll come back and talk about it more. What was also amazing about this time is I was told and instructed to write on the wall in my room. Now I was saying, well, if anybody thinks I'm crazy, and I start writing on the wall, all they have to do is come and take a picture, and they have all the evidence they need. But I guess the Creator was with me even there. So the primary picture that emerged from this, at first I tried writing it in a book, and every night when I was given new information, I would rewrite it. And I was told finally on the third night that you must put it on the wall because you're losing important information. This drawing was referred to as the Now Time drawing. And I was told that if I had the capacity to understand this drawing, I would understand all of the information that has come and all of the information yet to come. And I'm showing this because I'm trying to keep this in the sequence in which the information came. I am not an artist. I am not an engineer. None of that. But this is what emerged on my wall. Now, it began with the instruction for me to draw a circle and place the base 6 as what they refer to it. I'm a little bit... Okay. The base 6. And these were primary points, and I'm going to reorient this just a little bit. The base 6 was to give me a different orientation of the planet. Typically, I was used to thinking of north as being the top of the world, south being the bottom, and then you had your east and west, the equator. I was told that, first of all, I had to realign my thinking and understanding of the planet and to look at it in terms of the east being the top of the world, and that, in fact, we have already experienced a planetary shift in the axis that we call the equator or the 0 mark on an atlas, that shift has occurred, and it's at that east-west axis is now at 23 degrees latitude north and 32 degrees longitude east. So it took me a while to begin to orient myself to this. And I have a friend who studies meta-nature, quite a student of meta-nature, and he was at the house and he says, well, you know what that means, don't you? I said, no. Now, the other piece I want to say is that during this time I was instructed not to read. So I wasn't reading information to try to verify it. I was instructed that I'd have to reveal the information exactly how it was coming forward. What he told me was that if you read some of the ancient Egyptian writings, some of the pyramid texts, that you will find reference to the east as the top of the world. So at any rate, the orientation done, I began to look at the world a little bit differently. Other things that I have found out since then, I have a friend who's been clipping newspaper articles in reference to the information of Now Time Prophecy. In the Washington Post about a month ago, there was an article about this position, which puts us in the middle of Lake Nasser. How many of you are familiar with, or either have a reference for where Lake Nasser is? Okay. Lake Nasser is above the pyramids. It's a man-made lake, and what has happened as a consequence of that lake is that much of the artifacts of the Nubian culture have been covered up by the lake, and they are no longer accessible. So this article in the Washington Post was about the Nubians revolting to try to gain access and have some way for resurrecting the information that lies at the bottom of Lake Nasser. There was a bottom paragraph to that, just sort of, by the way, this is also in the ancient writings, the place that is often referred to as the city of Atlantis. So, you know, it's just curious to me. I no longer need confirmation for what's happening to me because the information is so profound. But at any rate, so I was instructed to first plot the base 6, the information being the top of the world, the north and south poles, the core, and then the footing or the anchoring being Trinity Islands off the Gulf of Alaska and the Auckland Islands off of the coast of New Zealand. And it was referred that if we wanted to experience what is happening at the core, that we would have to go to an area identified as the intersection of the Peru River and the Amazon River in South America. Now, what is interesting enough is that if any of you all have been tracking El Nino, you will find out that scientists believe that El Nino is erupting from an area under South America, where that hot air is coming out is actually under South America and coming up and affecting the water and temperature patterns as we've known it. Now, once I received that information, the base 6, then the next drawing that I received was the one that I showed you before. That is referred to as the now time drawing. I'm going to break this down into component parts so you understand that, and then we're going to get into some of the spiritual aspects of the information. This area here represents the celestial intersection of the planets and the Earth, or I should say the stars. Now, what I was told originally is that this is called the triad in the original drawings. And I was told that there is a point here behind this star. And I was told that this was Orion's belt. And that this is the middle star on Orion's belt. And behind that is a nebula. And that this nebula is where this energy or this universal breath is coming from. And this they call the seeding point. And that what has happened is that prior to in October there was a collision of the stars. Also, we have all the clippings from the Washington Post that coincide with this information. There was a collision of the stars. And accordingly, what happened when the stars collided, and I'm going to focus on this part, prior to that time, for a period of 26,000 years, because the information in Now Time Prophecy takes us back to 26,000 years, or the time before the pyramids, the earth went into what they call an age of darkness. And we've been in that age for the 26,000 years. We're coming to the end of that age now. When the collision of the stars occurred, and so instead of the triad being on top, it's here, and it's sealing the light, or sealing the energy from the earth. After the collision of the stars, the triad emerged from the earth and created a funnel. And this seeding point began to pour in pure energy. Now, this is energy that the earth has not felt in 26,000 years, or as people, as individuals, we have not experienced for 26,000 years. Then there was a planetary alignment, and much of this information was predicted in the prophecies, by the way. There was a planetary alignment that occurred in December. As this planetary alignment occurred, it created an opening in this funnel. And as this opening occurred, this energy began to be poured into the core of the earth at such a rate that it affected the planet. Now, let me say this. Many of us look at El Nino and we look at the different things that are happening. We look at it in fear that somehow, we're seeing the end of mankind, or the end of this, this, as the Bible says, the end time, I think, or reference to in a religious setting. But what is happening actually is that the earth is being revived. For the 26,000 years that we have been in what we call out of balance, or in this state of fall from grace, the earth has had to work overtime to maintain an environment that could nurture mankind, as mankind grew to the point of the increase in masculine energy to such an extent that mankind claimed dominion over all, in separation from what? From God consciousness. So now what is happening, this pure energy is coming into Mother Earth and creating a healing of the mother. I'll show you another drawing of that specifically. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Okay, so what is happening is as this pure energy is coming into the earth, it is creating at the core, if you were to think of this as being the core, it is creating an inner pool within the core. And this pool of pure energy is like an ocean and is causing a separation at the inner core. And so we have this emergence of this ball, if you will, this inner core, this freestanding ball in this pure energy circle. And this is beginning a rotation of itself. And as this rotation comes into effect and begins to spin at a greater and greater rate, it is affecting a balancing of the energies in the planet or in the earth. And because it creates that, then that energy has to go somewhere. So what is happening? You have these 4 primary vectors that are going out into the earth, each one birthing 2, so that there are 12 in all. 12 energy centers or 12 vectors that come out from the core and can actually be traced from the core out at whatever angle to the top of the world. So now each of these 12, according to the prophecy, and I know I'm going fast, but we only have a limited amount of time. Okay, we can always do this again and really get into it. But what is happening is each of these 12 point out to a particular celestial system, a star system or a planetary system. But they also have an inverse relationship. So each one has another angle or an inverted angle, and that angle points to what the prophecies call a black star that once lit the world that will be revived during this time. So that each one of those then points to 12 black holes. Now, in the Washington Post, about the same time that the Nubian article appeared, or the article on Lake Nasser, there was an article with photographs that scientists are now studying these black holes that are now emitting this light energy. And they had a photograph of the black hole with this light coming out. Of course, they had another explanation, but I just said, okay, you know. So that's what's happening now in terms of an energy standpoint. Now what I want to do is to talk a minute about, I talked about balancing of energy. I talked about masculine and feminine energy. When now time refers to masculine and feminine energy, it's important that we don't get hung up on women and man stuff, because that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the aspects of energy, the positive and the negative, the doer and the receiver. Okay? Now, in our age of darkness, I'm going to tell you the story about that kind of encapsulates where we are now. And if you will, remember that the information comes forth not just in technical information, but it also comes through in metaphor, in stories. So just kind of bear with me for a moment as I tell the story. Before we entered into this age of fall from grace, there was grandfather's sun and grandmother moon. Grandfather's sun and grandmother moon emerged and became one in creating their daughter, or Mother Earth. And this is what is called the Trinity or the Triad. In the birthing of Mother Earth, they joined again and emitted their seed into Mother Earth, who then bled the seed of mankind throughout the planet, and mankind emerged. Over the ages, and according to Now Time prophecy, there are 12 ages in the cycle of man, or in the cycle of the planet, or in the cycle of life. Over the ages, mankind fell out of balance to such an extent that in claiming dominion over everything in absence of the God consciousness, they created the ultimate act of violation, and that is the penetration or rape of the mother. Okay? In doing so, women even today carry this burden. If you think about the number of women who experience molestation and rape and submissive roles throughout various cultures, you find that same imbalance is repeated over and over again. And it is said in Now Time prophecies that women have carried that burden. Now where we are in terms of this new age, well, let me just keep with the story for a minute. It is said that Mother Earth, even in the act of defilement, forgave her children, because Mother Earth is what? Unconditional love. But the moon and the sun could not forgive the act of the children of Mother Earth, and they decided that at the end of the 12th season, mankind would be no more. And Mother Earth, in her unconditional love of her children, pleaded with them that mankind be given a second chance. And what was decided, that is at the end of the 12th season, which according to the prophecy is where we are now, and it's not inconsistent with any other ancient prophecy, where we are now is the end of this 12th season. And they decided that at the end of this 12th season, a call would go out, a mighty call. And the strongest of the strong will hear this call and go forward with the word and work to come into balance themselves. That's why I said the first imperative is the journey into unconditional love of self. Because when we come to that point, we emit the same love, power, and balance of Mother Earth. Okay? So as we come into that, those who are receiving the call, by whatever means we are guided, we'll all have different ways that we are touched and asked to move forward. We'll all have our trying periods where, according to the prophecy, in the final hour, free will yield to faith as we carry out whatever it is we've been instructed to carry out. So as we go through this awakening period, the prophecies refer to this as an opportunity for the one to return to the one. All right? Now, there's no guarantee. The guarantee is only that the call will go out. And if sufficient numbers respond at this time, there will be a balancing affected on this planet that we have not known. We will return to that age before the 26,000 years, when mankind walked in harmony, in balance with the spirit of the Creator. Okay? One who returns to the one. And so at the end of the 12th season, we are at a point where we have the opportunity to ascend, not in life after death, but to ascend here and affect the birthing of this new generation of man. That's what time it is. I'm feeling like somebody has a question or something they want to say. Please, this is sharing, because you're interfering with my presentation, because I'm picking up on your information. So if you have something, would you just step forward and say and share? You don't want to share? You just want to keep sending me messages to send me into another place? Okay. Okay. All right, I'll go with it. So that's what time it is. And the information that we're receiving now is to help us to trigger the memory that is 26,000 years old, that reconnects us, because we all have it, we all know it. But the reason the first imperative is coming into unconditional love of self is because through our genetic memory, that genetic link going back to the original man on earth, we have put blocks. We have created these barricades, these nice little closets where we tuck these things in, the pain, the hurt, the imbalance. And so the only way that we can come into a power and understanding of unconditional love is to make a journey. Now, I talked about in this particular drawing, how we experience this on the earth is through what we're calling now El Nino. And accordingly, El Nina is right on the heels, and we're yet to see what she's going to do. But El Nino, while we experience it in on the planet in terms of what's happening, we must remember that the imperative in now time, well, not the imperative, but an important foundation of now time is as above, so below. So that anything that is happening at the level of the planet is also happening within us. So that if we were to think of ourselves, there's also an El Nino occurring within each of us at this time. And we see this by effects on relationships, finances, and what finances are pulling and causing us to do and have to go through. We're seeing it as we're called into a action or a state of action that is contrary to, let's say, the way we've been trained and have emerged. Now imagine for me having worked all my life and become a dean of a college, and really at the time, really, kind of glorying in that, because not only was I a dean, I was the youngest and the only African American to ever emerge in this position in the state of Maryland, in the whole 17 colleges, and then to be in charge of all of the deans of continuing education for the state of Maryland. So, I mean, I'm rolling, And all of a sudden, I'm riding to work one morning, and this voice that filled the car so full said, "Let go and go in faith." I was like, excuse me? But it was so profound and so strong. I mean, when I say it literally filled this car, it wasn't just words. It was an energy that was so strong. I knew that it was an energy of something that was beyond me and beyond my understanding. However, it was strong enough that I went in and wrote a letter of resignation and resigned for 3 months out. I thought that at that time my calling was working with children and doing so through theater, because in Washington, D.C., there's a lot of healing that needs to take place with our young people. And so we had a theater company of young people, and it really emerged to be quite a company. I mean, we traveled everywhere. We even performed for the President of the United States and so forth. So, I mean, we really were making it, but we never had enough money to really do all the things that we wanted to do in terms of what the potential was. But I was told at the time that I had the vision to start this company that there would be 3 stages I would go through. And I did not understand that at the time, but I was told the first thing I would have to go through is a severing of all of the material things and the things of my ego. And that happened. The second thing I was told is that my whole life's work would change. And so I see that with the resignation of my position that happened. The third thing I was told is that I would have to walk alone in the final walk. And so when my husband and I broke up about 1.5 years ago, almost 2 years now, I really heard that. I said, oh my goodness, here I am. So what does this mean? So there have been many moments since then. And while I was going, people say, oh, I wish I could be like you, when they hear the information and they see the information. And I say, well, you must understand, you have to know what you're asking for. Because during that time that I told you that I went into isolation, I didn't have any money. I didn't, my phone was cut off. I didn't know if I was going to get thrown out of my apartment and all of this. And yet this voice kept saying, do as directed. And so then in the middle of January, Lycurgus said, we want you to come down here, meet us in North Carolina, and I've already hooked up a ride for you. And I'm thinking, I can't make this trip. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't want to leave the boys at the house. 2 of my boys are staying with me, plus another young man that sort of like my adopted son. And I'm like, I don't want to do that to them. And then Spirit said, at the same time that I was going through this, I was initiated into what is called the Sacred Rock Readings. And I was told that this is a very ancient tradition that goes back to the Stone people. So I was trying to think of whether I should do it or not, so I threw the rocks. And it said that I was about to enter a spirit journey, and if I had the faith, everything would be all right. But the decision would have to be mine. And so it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Lycurgus had arranged for me to meet the lady at 5:30 in the morning to go to North Carolina, and I still hadn't decided. And then finally I said, okay, I'm going. If I've come this far, I can't get scared now. I got in the car with Evangelist, and I had 35 cents in my pocket. And this has become a joke now. No rent paid. I didn't know what was going to happen. Within a day of the trip, the next 2 days, a day and a half, I was gifted with my rent money by someone who did not know me. And the way this happened is we were in the church service, and Pastor said, I had talked to her about the information of Now Time Prophecy. And she is the elder and pastor of this church. I don't believe they're real people. I think they're angels that are here doing God's work. I was sharing the information, and she was literally just, having shivers every now and then because she could connect it in her frame of reference. And so the next day at church service, she asked for 20 people to give $20. And she said, and I'm only asking it for me because I want you to do it because I asked you to. And so I knew I didn't have $20 because remember, I left with 35 cents. And when I got there, Kurgus had given me, I think, $20 bill, and we had gone to dinner, so I had about $10 left. And so I said, well, I sure wish I could give, but I didn't have anything. And then after everybody gave, she says, now I want, if you have $10, I want you to give to me. So I reached in my pocket. I had $10, and I knew I was supposed to put it in there. So I walked up and put it in the thing. I said, well, I guess, whatever needs to happen will happen, And so at the end of all of that, she turned out to the congregation, and she pointed at me, and she says, because you believed in me, you gave to me so that I can give to you, and what you need will be taken care of. See me at the end of the service. And I walked away with my rent. I think I walked away and went to the post office and mailed it in. But the point I'm trying to make is how important it is when we step out on faith at that darkest moment when free will yields to faith, we are able to manifest things so abundantly. Because when we are doing the work of spirit, you're not going to be let down. And I went down to, I don't know that I could have gone any lower than having my life taken. And so, now that was the beginning. I left there and came to Atlanta, and everybody that saw me gave me money. And Lycurgus can testify. I go to his church, and they take up a collection from a Bible study, and they give to me. I do some workshops that we hadn't even planned, and I'm financially rewarded again. And literally since the time of stepping out on faith, I am now booked all the way through April, going to places that I don't even know the people. But I said, Spirit, you took me this far, and wherever I have to go, I will go, wherever I am called. And I'll tell you something else, that whenever it's time for me to take a trip now, I leave with 35 cents in my pocket. And you know why? Because if I start there, then everything that happens to me, there's no doubt in my mind of the blessings that I receive. Okay? So with that, I'd like to take about a 5-minute break. And could we literally take 5 minutes? Because I really want to try to hit as much information as I can before we leave. Is that okay? Yes. Peace.
I have always wanted to ask this question. Many books and certainly with him, and you're touching on a lot of things on the radio that I'm just going to ask you that.
Please.
Do you know what it is that happened to us or our ancestors from before 25,000 years back?
Okay.
What was it? Because I can't find it in the Bible or just synopsis. I knew that question desperately to answer so I could move on.
Okay. I'm going to answer part of it in Lycurgus. Can I ask? Oh, the question was, what happened 26,000 years ago with our ancestors that has led us to this moment? How did we get to this imbalance? All I can speak to is now-time prophecy, okay? That's the only area that I know. And all I know is that I was told that, well, maybe we won't take a break quite yet. I was told that 26,000 years ago, when mankind was birthed into balance. That meant the masculine and feminine energy were balanced. There was no need for the masculine to dominate the feminine or the feminine to dominate the masculine. That in fact we existed in this realm of pure energy. And when we exist in pure energy, we exist in the universal consciousness, or connected to the universal consciousness, umbilically connected to Mother Earth and to the Trinity. But mankind, and the way I kind of interpret it, is that Mother Earth actually, spoils the child. And so mankind began to fall out of balance and claim dominion over the earth. Okay? Claiming dominion over the animals, over the trees, over the environment, over the ocean, over each other. And as we did that, we came further and further and further and further and further out of balance. And further and further and further and further away from our original position of connection to the Trinity or to the God consciousness. And so for this 26,000 year period, all that we look at that has happened is the result of this imbalance. And according to now-time prophecy, no matter which end of the spectrum you're on, if you're on the winning end or the losing end, okay, if we were to go back to our memory of slavery, if we were to look at that, no matter which end we were on, the fact that we were at one end or the other speaks to the imbalance of mankind, period. Okay? And so from a now-time perspective, that is how I would answer your question. And so what happened, actually a seal was put in place, an 8-pointed cube around the core of the earth that actually sealed this unconditional love energy so that at one day when it would come, the time would come where we'd enter the age of the resurrection of the unconditional love, that would be preserved. But around that was the jackal. Now, in many of our ancient writings, if you were to look in some of the ancient Egyptian writings, they talk about the jackal as being the guardian or keeper of the knowledge. But according to Now Time prophecy, the jackal was to keep the rest of the world from understanding what the true power and of unconditional love is all about. So symbolically, the jackal then represents the ego or the ultimate rise of masculine energy. Did you want to add anything to that? Lycurgus is a pastor of a wonderful church here, and we've kind of been on this journey together, so maybe from a biblical sense or something you might be able to. Okay.